Hello, thank you for checking out this video today. Welcome to my channel. My name is Chris. We talk all about koi ponds and water gardens, waterfalls, pond fish, aquatic plants, pond filtration, design, construction, troubleshooting, maintenance. I've got a ton of stuff here, a whole lot of videos. I've been building ponds now professionally for over 25 years, so I put together this channel to help share a little things that I've learned and how I do things to hopefully, give you some tips, some helpful advice, and, help make your pond experiences a little bit better. So I have a ton of videos here and they're all broken down to different categories in the playlist section. So if you go up to the playlist and you're looking for videos on, say aquatic plants, you'll find that playlist. Just click on it and you'll have all my videos on aquatic plants. All right, so lots of stuff here. Take some time, take a look around, subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate your support, and hopefully, it can help you out and answer some questions for you and, give you some good advice. So today's video, we are doing something pretty cool. We're looking at bottom drains. Why I use them on like 98% of all the ponds that I've ever built, and why I think you should consider using them in your own ponds if you're looking to build a pond. All right, so we're going to look at why I really love these bottom drains. So basically, let's just talk about what it is. All right, now I do have other videos here on my channel about bottom drains, rocks and gravel on the bottom of the pond, as opposed to using bottom drains, okay? Because if you're using bottom drains, you don't want to put rock and gravel on the bottom of your pond because it's simply going to clog up and keep the water from getting down into your bottom drain properly, all right? So it's one or the other. It's we use bottom drains or we have a pond with rock and gravel on the bottom. I'll get into that a little bit more. And then I also have videos on gravity-fed filter systems, all right? So basically, that is the best way to incorporate a bottom drain into your pond. To put these things in the bottom of a pond, run a 4-inch PVC pipe out directly into a filter tank in the ground outside. So all your debris goes right down the drain, right out the pipe, and right into the bottom of a filter tank, all right? So you can check out those other videos and hopefully they can, explain to you how all that stuff works. But yeah, let's just talk about why you should consider using bottom drains in your pond. So, as I said, these things are going to be on the bottom, okay? I do not put rock and gravel in the pond because it's going to block this thing up and not allow all the garbage to get in there. So I often get questions from some of my new clients, we're talking about building a pond, and I say, I don't use rock and gravel in the bottom of my pond, it's all just a liner. And sometimes I get a little like, what? Like, do you just have liner in the bottom of your pond? And I say, yes, exactly. So a couple reasons for that. Again, I won't get into crazy stuff. You can check out my other video here on, rocks and gravel versus bottom drains. But here's the basic thing, all right? Rocks and gravel hold a lot of debris, sludge, sediment, all right? I've been doing this for years. I maintain ponds. I gotta drain and clean a lot of ponds. And so many times when I see ponds with rock and gravel in the bottom of them, they're a mess. They're all full of sludge and sediment and mud and muck and rotting plants and leaves, and it's a mess, and it's really hard to clean. So all that stuff is rotting, decaying in the pond. It's giving off gases. It's a beautiful environment for bacteria and funguses and parasites to be growing. We don't want this stuff in the pond, all right? And people have to pay me to come in every year, in the spring usually, to drain and clean that whole pond, wash it all down, and try to clean it up as best as I can, is all I'm going to tell you. You can't totally clean it unless you take all that rock out and wash it all and then put it all back in, and that's ridiculous, all right? So, ponds that have bottom drains in it, we don't have to drain and clean. There's nothing in the bottom of the pond. It stays so much cleaner. the pond stays cleaner, all right? Which means the water's going to be cleaner, because all that mud and sediment in the bottom of the pond, as your fish are swimming by and they're digging things up and all that mud is being caked back up again into the water. None of that, all right? All the debris comes right down. So one of the real beautiful things about using a bottom drain, all right? And this is my number one reason, and it's just a total like no-brainer, right? It's just absolutely the thing that kind of sold me on it, and it just makes sense. All right? Simply, where does all the debris in your pond go? Right? Well, as long as we have gravity, it's all going to go to the bottom. All right? Everything goes down to the bottom. So why not have a way of taking all that garbage that settles in the bottom of the pond that we don't want and get it out? It's that simple, all right? Now, these bottom drains are designed to collect all that sediment and remove it. Our other option is to put, sometimes if you don't have a bottom drain, you're putting a submersible pump in the bottom of your pond, or you're putting in a suction strainer that leads to an external pump, right? So just think about this, all right? Here we have a drain that's designed for all the garbage just to go in and get out and end up in a filter tank where it belongs, out of your pond. Or we're going to put in a pump or a suction strainer right in the middle of all the crap that builds up in the bottom of your pond. So what happens? Well, the suction strainers get clogged, the pumps get clogged up, right? And what happens if that happens? Well, pumps can burn out. They're under a lot of stress now, right? Because they can't get the water that they need. So they're under stress to get the water, to pull that water up that it can't get. And so it shortens the life on the pump. And even more importantly, it's reducing the flow greatly, if not totally, to your filters or your waterfalls and stuff. So the pumps get clogged up because they're right in the bottom, sucking in that stuff directly into the impellers of the pumps, where it's either going to puree it and grind it up more, or just get clogged. But it's going to slow down your filter system. Your filters aren't going to work. And then your waterfalls and stuff don't work, so then you don't have aeration in the pond. So this is just like a no-brainer to me, right? Like, why would you want to put up with that when you can just have bottom drains that just remove all that stuff exactly the way it's designed? All right? So that's number one, right? Now, when you put a bottom drain in the bottom of your pond, you want to slope the dirt down to it, just gradually, right? So it's a nice slope right down. So if some debris kind of comes down over here, it's going to hit the bottom, and eventually it's going to make its way down, 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 because gravity's going to pull it down, down right to the drain, in, and it's out. Okay? Everything will work its way down. Now, if you have a large pond and you're using multiple drains, all right, I'm actually going to be building a pond here starting next week where I bought 4 of these. This is one of them. 4 of them are going to go in the bottom of this pond. So, you know, you could put one here, one there, one over here, and one over here, and have the whole entire pond come right down into one low section in the middle. All right, yeah, that could work. But if it's a larger pond, you probably want to have one bottom drain out over there, one out over there, one over here, one over here. And you can do that with no problem at all. But what you're going to want to do is just slope that dirt down a little bit to that bottom drain over there, a little bit down to that drain over here, right? A little bit down here. Just so wherever the debris falls, it's going to come down and work its way down to the closest bottom drain. All right? So, 4-inch bottom drains, you use all 4-inch pipe. Do not reduce it. It's got to be 4-inch from here all the way to your filter tank. If you reduce it along the way, you're going to greatly limit the amount of water that can go through it. All right? Again, that's in the whole other video. We won't get into that right now. I just want to mention that. All right, so that's, all right, number one, the biggest advantage of using a bottom drain. Now, second thing is, there's no piping, no hoses, no tubing, nothing in the bottom of your pond. All you see in the bottom of your pond is the top of this lid. All right, so your whole pond liner's down here, and you got a little lid right on the top. That's it. Right? No hoses coming down over the rocks, no pipes and suction strainers in the pond, check valves, all that kind of stuff. Submersible pumps with electric cords coming out. None of that. All right? Who wants to see that? Right? This is really nice. It keeps everything so nice and clean. Right? It just looks better. Now, getting back to rocks and gravel in the bottom of the pond as opposed to just a black pond liner, because I get this a lot, right? And people say, you don't use rocks and gravel, you just have a black liner in the bottom of the pond? And I say, yes, exactly, all right? So I get it, all right? Yeah, the rocks and the gravel look natural, right? Sometimes, I mean, I've seen some ponds where the rock work underwater is beautiful. Like, it's more time and effort went into doing all the rock work underwater than they probably put into it on top of the water and the waterfall. But all that rock and gravel is not going to stay, you know, shiny and clean forever. In fact, it probably will only take a couple weeks before it starts turning green. So a lot of the rock and gravel, you know, not only holds all that sludge and sediment, but it's going to get, you know, turn a green, brown kind of color anyway. Now, there are some ponds where it does stay pretty clean, all right, and it looks nicer. But for the most part, you can expect it to turn kind of greenish and, you know, dark and get dirty anyway. So it's not always going to keep that beautiful, clean, pristine look that you're thinking of, all right? The other thing is that the black of the liner will actually get that green, slimy algae coat on it as well. Now, that darker color, actually, to me, I think that shows off the color of the fish so much more. So if you have, you know, even goldfish, right, but big, you know, beautiful koi, goldfish, those oranges and reds and whites and all those colors really stand out with a dark background, right? So I think it's really nice. But anyway, again, the biggest advantage is there's no cleanup. I don't have to drain and clean a pond every year that has bottom drains in it because there's no debris in the bottom. There's nothing in the bottom of the pond. I might get a little couple leaves here sometimes. Sometimes the leaves will build up around the lid of the bottom drain in the fall if the ponds aren't netted. But simply we take a net and we just scoop out around the bottom drain and it's clean, right? And it's going. So yeah, the maintenance is so much less, right? All the debris that gets into your pond simply goes out. We don't want all that crap rotting and decaying in the pond. So huge advantage right there. And we certainly don't want a pump right in the middle of all the crap that settles in the bottom. All right? Okay, next point, like I said, no pipes, no hoses, no electric cords coming out, no check valves, suction strainers, any of that stuff visible in the pond. Just the little bottom drain here. So it's so simple. Yeah, I mean, those are major points that we need to consider. So another thing I just want to touch on here, one minute, is simply the fact that there are bottom drains that are called like retrofit bottom drains. If you already have a pond, so the question I get a lot is, I already have a pond, how can I install a bottom drain in it? Well, a simple answer is you can't. All right, it's really hard. You'd have to drain the pond, take out all the rock work, pull the liner back, at least, a quarter of the way over the pond so you can get underneath it to put a drain underneath it, and then put the liner back, right? Do all your plumbing, put the liner back in, and then redo all your rock work. It's a big effort. Now, the other thing with that is sometimes an old pond liner is going to be very dirty. On the top and on the bottom, it's going to have dirt. It's going to have all kinds of, just muck built up on it. And it's going to be really hard to clean it. And we have to get it really clean to be able to put a nice silicone seal on this thing, all right? Silicone is not going to stick to algae, so it's difficult to do that. So if it's an older pond, they sell what they call a retrofit bottom drain, which is basically a unit just like this that's turned upside down, and it has a couple little feet on the bottom of it. So it literally sits maybe an inch off the bottom of your pond, just like this, and then you have to run your piping out on top of your pond liner and out, all right, however you do that. That is typically going to be set up with an external pump that's going to have the suction pipe coming down into the pond and, put a big check valve in down here and then hook up to the drain. Now, it's not the same. It's just not the same. In this usage, it's basically just a glorified suction strainer, because you are pulling all the garbage that gets in here, you're pulling it directly into your pump. You might as well just put a suction strainer in the bottom of the pond and suck the water out. It's the same thing. It is totally different than having this bottom drain set up properly underneath your pond liner and gravity fed out. All right? Yeah. So definitely something to think about there. But again, right, these systems just work. My ponds stay really clean. There's no, settlement in the water. There's no garbage rotting and decaying in the bottom of the pond. I don't have the maintenance. I don't have to drain and clean these ponds every year. There's nothing there to clean, all right? So, it's just really something to consider if you're building a new pond. Again, you have to weigh the idea of, rock and gravel. Do I really need to have rock and gravel in the bottom of my pond? Well, if you really want to do that, then I guess you can't use a bottom drain. I used all my rocks and gravel on the, my rock and boulders and stuff on the top ring of my pond, and I actually built a shelf 4 to 6 inches underwater for all that rock and gravel. So when I fill my ponds up with water, it actually appears that the rock is coming up out of the water. So you never see any of that black liner around the top of the pond. So that's the way I kind of dress that up. But from, that shelf with the rocks on it down, the whole thing is just black liner, okay? But it's so much cleaner and healthier. So really, really neat here. If you can use a bottom drain, there's a lot of advantages to it. Again, it just makes total sense. All the debris settles to the bottom and out it goes. Now, another little argument, just briefly, I want to tell you about is the use of skimmers. Because I've had people say things like, well, if you have a skimmer and it pulls everything off the top, then there's less stuff that's got to go down at the bottom. Yeah, absolutely, to a point, right? To a point, because, yeah, it will pull stuff off the surface, but, just think about it. Your pond is 4 feet deep. You've got a fish swimming at, 1.5 feet off the bottom, and he poops, right? Well, that stuff isn't going to just go floating up to the top and then go right over to the skimmer. It's going to just fall to the bottom. If you have lilies, if you have water plants, but I want to use lilies specifically, the leaves are constantly regenerating, dying off, new ones grow, the flowers come up, they bloom for a while, they curl back down underwater, they rot away. All that debris goes to the bottom. It's not going to go to your skimmer, right? Leaves fall in the pond in the fall. If you have lilies and water hyacinths in the pond, well, they're going to block all those leaves from going all the way across into your skimmer over there. Perhaps, leaves fall in and your skimmer's there and the wind is blowing that way, all right? So there's a lot of things, right? Does the skimmer help? Yeah, all right. But we still have gravity. Dirt falls in the pond, you know, whatever, silt, mud, whatever might get into the pond, it's not just going to float and go to your skimmer, it's going to fall to the bottom, right? So, yeah, right? It just makes sense. Total sense. Real quick, while I'm thinking about skimmers too, let me go back to this. Sometimes I have seen people use a bottom drain and connect it into a skimmer. Yeah, I have mixed feelings about that. Is it a bad thing? No. But how effective is it really? It's really hard to gauge that simply because there's no way to regulate how much water is being pulled in from that skimmer and how much is going into the bottom drain that's working its way into the skimmer. All right? Unless you can put a valve on the bottom drain before it gets into the skimmer. But we still have to consider that water wants to travel in the path of least resistance. Okay? So if you have a big skimmer, you have a sump pump in your skimmer with a big door in front, and your bottom drain comes in on the side here, that water is just going to come pouring right in that door really easily. And, you know, it's going to take a little more effort for the water to go through all those pipes and come up and go in. You can't regulate it very well. So I'm thinking the majority of your water is just going to come right in that door and right into your sump pump. So you're probably not pulling as much from the bottom as you would like to. All right, so that's just another thing to think about. Bottom drains, run them out to a dedicated, like gravity-fed tank outside your pond. It's absolutely just makes sense. It's just the best way to go with that. All right. So thank you very much for watching. I'm going to end it right there. I hope it answered some questions, gave you something new to think about today. Thank you very much for watching. Please hit the little thumbs up, the like button here. It really helps to, promote the channel a little bit. Subscribe if you're into this stuff. There's a ton of videos here. I hope, you can really find some good information to help you out. And yeah, thank you for watching today. And yeah, we'll be back with another video hopefully soon. Take care. Have a great day. Bye.